All right, let's jump right in. I've got a question for you, and it's about something you probably do dozens of times a day without even thinking about it.
You know that moment? That tiny pause where you're just staring at the screen, wondering? If you even have to ask that question, I'd argue the design has already let you down. That hesitation, that's a failure.
And that really gets to the core of what we're talking about today. In this big push for minimal, clean design, did we go too far? Did we accidentally throw out the useful stuff? The little clues that actually helped us figure things out?
So to really get this, we got to take a quick trip back in time. Remember when digital stuff tried to look like, well, real stuff? That's called skeuomorphism. Buttons looked like you could actually push them, notebooks had leather textures, you get the idea. You didn't have to guess, because it was all based on things from the real world. And then, everything went flat.
And this is where you can really see the shift side by side. On one hand, you have the old school cues, depth, shadows, textures, borders. All these things basically shout, hey, I'm a button, click me. But then you look at the flat UI reality, and it's just a single plane. There's no depth. The signals are way more subtle. And yeah, it looks super clean, but you can feel that something's missing, right?
So what exactly got left on the cutting room floor in the name of simplicity? Well, a lot, actually. We lost those depth cues that tell your brain this is on top of that. We lost the clear visual hierarchy that tells you what's most important. We lost that feeling, that little hint that something is meant to be pushed. And maybe worst of all, we lost the obvious difference between something you can click and something that's just there.
And this is the big, fundamental problem. If everything looks like it's on one flat sheet of paper, the text, the pictures, the buttons, how are you supposed to know what's what? How do you tell the difference between something you're just supposed to read and something you're supposed to do? It's a huge challenge.
All right, so let's look at some real-world examples of this ambiguity in action. I'm willing to bet you've run into these yourself, probably more times than you can count.
Okay, picture this. You're looking at a screen, it's super minimal, just a white background, some text, and then there's a word in blue. Just a blue word. No box around it, no shadow, nothing.
So what does your brain do? It goes into overdrive for a millisecond. Is that a link? A headline? Is it just blue? That little bit of thinking you have to do, that's called cognitive load. It's like a tiny tax you have to pay just to use the app.
And that's the whole problem in a nutshell. When you rely only on color to tell someone, hey, you can click this, you're using a really weak signal. It's just not enough.
And think about who this really hurts. It's tough for new users who are just learning the ropes. It's a huge problem for anyone with color vision issues. And let's be honest, it gets all of us when we're in a hurry and just trying to scan the page fast.
Now, I know what some of you are thinking. What about hover states? You know, when you move your mouse over it and it changes. And that's a fair point, but it's also kind of a patch, not a solution. See, good design tells you what's clickable before you even move your mouse. A hover state only confirms it's clickable after you've already started hunting for it. That's a huge difference. It's reactive, not proactive.
And hey, this isn't just about lonely buttons. It's a massive issue in navigation too. You've seen those menus, right? Where every single item looks exactly the same. No bolding, no lines, no highlight on the page you're on. The whole thing just flattens out and suddenly you're lost. You don't know where you are or where you're supposed to go.
Okay, so I want to be fair here. Flat design didn't just show up to make our lives harder. There were actually some really good reasons for it. But, and this is a big but, those benefits came with some pretty serious costs.
This table really breaks it down. We got visual simplicity, which looks great, but the cost was ambiguity. We wanted everything to be consistent, but that often meant a really weak hierarchy. And yeah, flat design can be faster to load and easier to scale, but it puts more of a mental burden on you, the user, because you have to work harder to figure it out.
So here's the bottom line. Simplicity and ambiguity are two sides of the same coin. And a lot of designers, in trying to be simple, ended up being ambiguous by mistake.
So what's the answer? Well, it's not to ditch minimalism altogether. The real issue isn't minimalism, it's uncompensated minimalism. You can take things away for sure, but you have to replace what you removed with something else.
This is what I call the compensation principle, and it's probably the most important idea in this entire explainer. It's pretty straightforward, really. If you're going to get rid of shadows, you better crank up the contrast. If you're taking away borders, you have to use spacing and white space like a master. And if you're killing gradients, then your typography and font sizes have to do all the heavy lifting to show what's important. You have to trade one cue for another. So let's circle back.
The real problem was never flat design as an idea. The problem was taking away those old real-world metaphors and then not putting anything clear in their place. We traded clarity for cleanliness, and that was a bad deal.
So, I've got a challenge for you. From now on, as you use your phone or browse the web, start looking for this stuff. Ask yourself, where could a little shadow help me out? Or is this hierarchy totally confusing? Notice how many times buttons just blend in with everything else, and pay attention to how often color is the only thing telling you what to do. I promise, once you start looking, you'll see it everywhere.
At the end of the day, it really boils down to this one simple truth. A clean interface is nice, but if that cleanliness comes at the expense of clarity, all it does is make people pause and second-guess themselves.
And that pause, that tiny moment of doubt, that is the textbook definition of a design failure. The interface failed to communicate what it does. So the real question for all of us, for designers and users alike, is how do we start getting that clarity back?